Hello and welcome to the Secrets to Explosive Growth with Tom Searcy, brought to you by Vistage Connect. Today's presentation is being brought to you through Vistage Connect, and Vistage Connect is really an amazing extension of the entire Vistage community. You know, Vistage has been bringing leadership ideas and leaders together for over 50 years with 15,000 members in over 14 countries to help leaders lead better. And their newest offering, Vistage Connect, brings together those leaders from across the globe in a virtual format. If you'd like more information or would like a free trial of Vistage Connect, email contact@vistageconnect.com with the subject Explosive Growth Webinar. That's contact@vistageconnect.com with the subject line Explosive Growth Webinar. My name is Tom Searcy, and welcome. If this is our first time to talk to each other, it's a pleasure to meet you virtually. My background is running 4 fast growth companies. I've had the opportunity to run 4 companies that went from either startup or less than $10 million to greater than $200 million in size. All 4 of those companies that I had the privilege to lead did that in less than 5 years each. In each case, they did it without buying anyone or merging with anyone or being bought by anybody. It was all explosive growth brought on by key account selling, and I've now had the opportunity to start up the Hunt Big Sales Company and the Hunt Big Sales Academy as a way to teach those ideas to other companies. And now we've taken 300 companies through that process, and they've landed over $5 billion in new sales, sales that have helped companies that are less than $100 million in size, sometimes even less than $5 million in size, double the speed with which they double the size of their company. I'm fortunate I get a chance to write for Inc. magazine every week and for CBS News Money Watch, and have had a chance to speak because of Vistage and all of the other international opportunities. I've had to speak to over 5,000 CEOs around this idea of rapid growth. And it's interesting that the Hunt Big Sales Academy, the whole purpose of that is to teach companies how to be effective at landing large account sales. But the reason that we're having the conversation today, what are the secrets to explosive growth? We're having that conversation because sometimes when the dog catches the car, there's a problem. I mean, what happens if it works? What happens if you land a transformational account? What happens if you're able to, again and again, according to a process, not magic, go get those accounts that are 10 to 20 times the size of your average account? What will that do to your company? Now, immediately, entrepreneurs on the phone right now and are on this webinar are thinking to themselves, it would be great. We'd have more money. We'd have more resources. We'd have the opportunity to speak to more people and to be with more people. It's all true. But I want you to get that picture in your mind of the dog catching the car. Because at some point, the speed with which the car moves is different than the speed with which the dog can move. And maybe the worst thing that can happen to you, depending upon what you do, is that you actually land that particular account. While we're going through the webinar today, I'd like to encourage anybody who's listening right now to, if you've got a question or if you'd like to post something up, at the end we'll have hopefully a little bit of time for some questions and answer. Put those in the question box on the GoToWebinar control panel that's on your screen right now, and you can send those to me if something comes throughout the presentation or the discussion today. So specifically, what are we going to accomplish? Well, we're going to talk about the fact that explosive growth is a choice first. You don't have to grow explosively. And when I speak about explosively, I mean doubling your double. Doubling the speed with which you double the size of your company. Now, only you, if you're a business owner or if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an executive leader inside of a company, knows what that doubling amount was already in your mind. Maybe you thought you were going to double your company in 10 years. Or maybe it was in 7, or in 5, or in 3. I happen to be talking to you right now from out in Los Angeles in the California area, and the fact is out here, people kind of expect that they're going to double their company about every week. It just depends on what kind of technology company they might be running. But whatever your expectation is, you have to know that explosive growth is a choice. You don't want to wake up one day and find your company blowing up underneath you, and you're not ready for it. So that kind of brings us to the second point that we'll be talking about today, which is what does explosive mean to you specifically? Because there are, and the third thing I want to talk about, risks for not growing. So you've got to make a decision what explosive is. I will tell you that the idea of holding a velocity over a sustained period of time is a myth. I don't think it's possible. To be honest, I think that organizations are either growing or declining. We'll talk a little bit about what that means here in a minute, and you're going to have to make a decision at that pace. The 4 pillars of explosive growth that I talk about when I do my larger presentation include these 4: culture, sales, operations, and finance. In today's conversation, because of the limitations of time, we'll be able to really cover and dive into culture and sales. But you have to have 4 pillars to allow your organization, and they have to be strong and ready to go when those opportunities come to you for you to be able to take advantage of them. And so those are those 4 pillars right there: culture, sales, operations, and finance. And finally, I want to leave today's conversation with 5 steps to explosive growth. You need to be able to walk away from here and say, what am I going to do today and to start this process? If I've made the decision, Tom, that I want to grow explosively and I want to move forward, and you can move that, and you can see that opportunity, what should I start with? All right, so step number 1, what does explosive growth mean? Now, hopefully you've got a pad of paper and a pen with you right now, and I want you to take some notes as we're going through this. But I want you to think about your own business for right now. Let's take let's take a baseline back, say 4 or 5 years. And some of the businesses haven't been around that long, but I want you to think about this idea. Now, let's say there was a baseline of 2005, and if you can see the graphic on your screen right now, and hopefully you can. You should be looking at a graph that talks about dollars in change in sales on the left-hand side, on the right-hand percentage change in sales, and then there's a bar in there that talks about what does explosive growth mean. All right, so starting off with the idea that 2005 we did $10 million in business. The next year, I arbitrarily put in the idea that you added $2 million in more sales. This is gross dollars, gross sales. This isn't gross profit margin or net profits, although those are probably the places that we're driving to. For the sake of the conversation today, we'll talk about gross sales. So here we are. We've done $2 million, and if you look at the percentage there, that means that's equivalent to a 20% increase in size. All right, great. So that's a good year. You grew 20% in 1 year. You went from $10 million to $12 million. What happens if you do it again the next year and you grow another $2 million? Well, now you're at $14 million in sales. Great. You've grown up, but did you grow 20%? No, you grew about 16.67%, because that $2 million is now divisible by 12 million, not by 10 million. Most of the folks on this conversation right now are probably able to do all that math in their head, but just in case you weren't able to, what you see over time is diminishing rate. If I use the same flat amount of growth of dollars, 2 million each year over the period of time, what you see is actually a deteriorating rate of growth, and that we are at less than half the speed of growth only 5 years later. That's right, 5 years later, what was a big deal at 20% growth at 2 million starts to go ahead and look only like it is 10%, and it starts to diminish out. Well, you're probably saying to yourself, well, Tom, I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm growing 2 million a year, that's great, that's great. What's the problem with that? Well, let me tell you, you will, if you start to deteriorate your rate of growth, you will start to institutionalize inside of your company a sense of a diminishing rate of growth. Your organization will start to come to expect as a norm, not that we are increasing in size or that we are getting better, but even though we are growing at a diminishing rate, which will feel like to the culture that you are beginning to slide, to slip, to deteriorate. And so there's a real danger inside of that, inside of your organization. You know, the funny thing is that it sets a new normal. One of the things I talk about in my writings and in some of the things that I speak about is the value of a set point. A set point, think about it like losing weight. Let's just say that you're at a particular weight and you want to drop 15 pounds. Many of the people on the phone right now are saying that's everybody in the United States seems to want to drop 15 pounds. But if so, there was a set point that was keeping you at your current weight. A certain level of activity, a certain level of sleep, a certain level of food, a certain level of supplements, a certain level of exercise. That was your set point. To change your set point, to get that 15 pounds diminished, you're going to need to change all those elements that get you to drop that weight. And when you get to that new set point, 15 pounds less, you will need to have modified your activity to maintain that. I'm going to tell you that inside of an explosive growth organization or inside of any organization, there is a set point. You have inside of your company an expectation of growth. Maybe it's very aggressive, which is awesome. Maybe it's very tepid, which is sad. but there is an expectation. And guess what everybody's norm is now? They know how many hours they work. They know how hard they work. They know what activity is required of them. And if you want to change your organization and make it create the opportunity for it to grow faster, you're going to have to set a new normal. You're going to have to create for everybody an expectation that it's not going to be the same. We can't eat the same, drink the same, work out the same, take the same amount of sleep, have the same amount of water. Well, whatever those equivalents are for the behaviors in your organization, if you want to set a new normal, otherwise this sustained period of time at that rate represents the normal. And guess what? You're going to keep getting what you get. Oh, you can run all the contests you want. You can send out all the emails that you want. You can do all those great organizational behavior reinforcement things. However, if you do not move and declare what is our new normal going to be and then set out a new set of expectations of activity to support that new normal, behavior won't change. The third most insidious problem about sustained rate of growth, all right? And when I say sustained rate of growth, I'm talking about, actually, I should have said sustained amount of growth, that $2 million amount. The insidious problem is you start to lose talent. See, winners are expecting to be on a team that wins. What does that mean? That means that they're expecting to be growing at an increasing rate over time. And what happens to your talented people? Well, maybe the light goes out in their eyes. It's like the lion who's at the zoo and no longer roars. You'd hate to see that happen to your best and most talented people. But the other thing is they start to get restless, and they start looking around and saying to themselves, how did I get on this ship where we seem to be getting worse, not better, where we seem to, we're growing some, but we're not growing very much, and we're not growing very fast. How do I change that and move up and get bigger faster? Well, they're going to start asking that question, talking to their friends, looking out in the opportunity marketplace, and they're going to move to places in which dollars and percentages are growing at a more rapid rate. So for you, you've got to figure out, what does explosive growth mean? What is sustainable growth? The last company I ran, we went from $0 to $10 million in our first year. We did $40 million in the second, $70 million in the third, and $200 million in the fourth. I think most people on the phone right now would agree that that's a pretty rapid rate of growth. We went from 1 employee to 6,500. Just in case you're curious, I would not advocate this. This was where the dog caught the car, and the car won. It darn near killed me. But I will tell you that everybody that we hired, the story was a story of explosive growth, and those people that came on board were hungry for that kind of growth. And when you build an organization in which people are regularly hungry for that kind of growth, you get that kind of result. Okay, so you say, Tom, I don't want to go 10, 40, 70 to 200. I mean, that's lovely. It's a lovely story. But for me, I just like to see if we can't grow at 15% a year. I mean, do the math, Tom. In less than 5 years, I'll double at that particular rate as I start to stack that on. And so, yeah, I see your point. We'd like to get the percentage growth. What are the risks if you don't grow? What are the problems in your marketplace if you start to stagnate or diminish? Now, I talked about it around your culture. But let's talk about it a little bit broadly. One of the things is that if you stand still, big players start to move into your niche and perhaps start to claim your niche or your market space. Maybe you've noticed in the economic downturn that you've started to see the kinds of competitors that you never expected to see in your space before. Larger organizations that are sending their salespeople into your accounts that you thought were below or in size or outside of in market niche what they do, but now they're showing up. This is what happens when you stand still. Second thing is that sometimes when you're in the marketplace for a long time, you start to get what we call thunder without rain, which means opportunities are coming to you. The phone keeps ringing and emails come to you and et cetera, and you get new RFPs that are sent to you, and all of that happens simply because you've been around long enough and your name has gotten out there enough that you start to get lots and lots of opportunities. Unfortunately, however, when that happens, that's not always the best thing. Sometimes it winds up wasting an enormous amount of your energy and your people's time dealing with unqualified, less qualified, or less desirable opportunities that are coming to you. So you can get thunder without rain just holding still over time. sometimes you find these new faces out in the marketplace that you did not expect. And sometimes the new faces are smaller companies, and sometimes they're bigger companies. Also, what we find, of course, is that the longer you stay at kind of a regular rate of growth, you kind of bob in the ocean. You know, it's funny. Plot your own growth according to that graph that I gave you on the prior page, where it shows percentage dollar amount and then percentage amount of growth year over year, and look at your own history. Sometimes you bob in the ocean. Your annual revenues go up and down like a buoy, and you know, you perceive that a ceiling of revenue amount that you can't break through, because you kind of go up and then you go down. You win one, you lose one, and that's what we call trading places, where your company is losing large accounts at a similar rate that it adds new ones. And so the thing is for you as an organization, you need to make certain that you are working really, really hard at continuing to grow at a regular rate. And so if you can figure out a way to do that, so then you're going to make certain that you can continue to grow. The 4 pillars of explosive growth I wanted to talk about today include sales, culture, operations, and finance. So the secret, however, is the order. If you want to build an organization that is ready for that kind of rapid growth, you want to start off with the idea of culture. Culture is the first thing that you need to build in your organization, which is that appetite, that perspective, that whole arrangement inside of the people in your company. I'm going to talk about culture pretty richly today, because I know that if the culture is not ready for the growth, it will actively push back and resist on that kind of growth and all those growth efforts. Then obviously the second thing is that, okay, I've got a culture that wants to grow, but if I don't have the fuel inside of the rocket ship to let it grow, I need the sales to make that move, and I got to make those sales happen. And what we find with organizations is oftentimes there's these little thresholds that you get as a company. So let's talk about threshold 1. You become operationally excellent, you become known for the product, the quality of the service that you provide, and you get to a certain little size. Michael Gerber talks about that in E-Myth Revisited. Other organizations talk about it when they talk about no man's land. But there's a threshold in capacity that your operational excellence will take you to. For the sake of this discussion, just as an example, let's say that threshold is about $10 million in annual revenue. So then at that particular point, you've extended yourself inside of your marketplace. You've worked your brand. Your reputation has generated an awful lot inside of that. That next step that it's going to take to move beyond that is a dramatic change in your approach to how you sell. You have the culture of excellence inside of your organization, but you don't have the mechanisms for marketing and selling to take you to that next level. As you start to generate those large accounts and those new accounts and that growth engine of selling, then the next thing you're going to need to have is the finance. The operations actually can stretch a little bit with inside of its own incremental capacity improvements, but can the cash flow handle the adding of additional accounts? And can the cash flow handle the adding of the incremental people, equipment, raw materials, and et cetera to produce the goods and services that you offer? And then the next threshold that you'll wind up having to resolve, and this happens at a much later point, is a retooling of the operations. And we find a lot of the organizations that we work with, as they move through these cycles, the culture is strong but needs a little bit of tweaking. The sales, they change that system. They start to generate more sales. Sales has a tendency to, as long as it's contractually based, attract finance, although I know there's some people in the room that are kind of right now nodding their head no because they've spent some time in the last couple of years trying to get finance. But finance is coming back a little bit. But now what we're finding is that this phase, when they get to the operations side, they're focusing on principles like lean manufacturing and other kinds of quality methodologies and constraint modeling like Goldrat and others teach as ways to improve and make it more efficient their operations. So if you're looking at your company right now and you're scoring, and if you, by the way, if you go online to Facebook and you go to Hunt Big Sales, to our fan page, Hunt Big Sales, and you like that, if you click on that and like that, we'll send you an assessment package, just a free gift for you to go ahead and take a look at where do you sit right now with some of these 4 pillars of explosive growth, and most specifically, where do you fit inside of that organizational preparedness around culture and sales. So if you go to Facebook and like the Hunt Big Sales, you'll get that particular assessment back. But right now, I want to make certain that we've got the cultural elements built. And the first question is, How do you want to grow explosively? You know, most of the time, when you're out there in the marketplace, we start off, when we're talking to people, we're talking to companies, we talk about what we do. You know, there's this whole model out there of what we call the elevator speech. Books have been written on it. Seminars have been given on it. Blogs upon blog upon blog are written about this idea, this mythical moment in an elevator when someone gives an elevator speech. And typically the elevator speeches that I see out there are a lot about what? What is it we do? What product do we sell? What service do we offer? And a lot of companies have done well by just screaming out there at the product level what they do. A lot of companies, on the other hand, move to the idea that, well, product is in our marketplace a little bit more of a commodity. It's more of a typical. Everyone can offer something close enough to the same that it's hard to differentiate with the idea of what we sell. So instead, we talk about our service equation. What is our service commitment? How do we make certain that our customers feel world-class treated and assisted in every need that they've got? And that may be the way that you want to grow explosively. So instead of moving from product, you're instead moving to service. But Simon Sinek, in his book Start With Why, and I'd encourage you to go and take a look at his video on TED.org, which I think is pretty remarkable, really makes what I found in my own background to be really, really important to understand, which is your why. You know, why is it that you are in business, and why is it that growth is so important for you, your organization, and your marketplace? I mean, when we look at my why, I have a fundamental belief that it is becoming more challenging for small and mid-sized businesses to operate effectively and to compete aggressively against larger firms in the marketplace. Simple math, governance requirements, RFPs, RFQs, procurement, purchasing, the lack of availability of funding, the leverage that scale and scope give to big companies are starting to make it more challenging for small companies to land really, really big deals. And there's becoming a separation between the big guys that are in the marketplace that are heavily entrenched and the small guys that are out there and mid-sized guys that are trying to take that market share from them. It's no longer an even field. And my why is to give small and mid-sized companies a core set of tools and practices that if they follow, they can not only compete against big companies out in the marketplace, but they can beat big companies in the marketplace and take back that market share and to then allow them to grow explosively. That's my why. Now, how do we do it? Well, we do it through world-class sessions and the academy and programs and books and materials and etc. And what do we sell? Well, we sell keynotes and we sell all those other kinds of product pieces and program pieces and custom work. That what and that how, but the why is what drives us. And so when we reach out and talk to folks in the marketplace, we're holding on to that idea of the why. And the question on your page right now should be, okay, I should have a list of my what. What is the product or service that I sell? Then I should have a list of my how. What is my service commitment and the mechanism by which I deliver it? And then there's my why. Why am I in business? Because that why should power your why do you want to grow explosively. So let's just take the idea of USAA, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the United States. And what do they sell? Well, they sell a whole bunch of financial instruments and insurance out there in the marketplace. They're one of the biggest carriers in the United States. And how do they do that? They do it through world-class service. They do a remarkable level of service. Matter of fact, rated as one of the most admired companies, best companies to work for, highest level of customer satisfaction surveys out there. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of insurance companies. If you turn on your TV on any one given day, USAA is competed against with hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of ad budgets by people like Geico and Progressive and American General and all sorts of other companies that are out there. They're selling a variety of different kinds of State Farm and Allstate. Figure it out. But yet, how come USAA is consistently so admired and so effective and so good? Well, I'm going to tell you, it's their why. The why of USAA that they push out into the marketplace is simple. USAA sees itself as the stewards of the financial future of servicemen and women, their dependents, and veterans. That's what they see their why as. And so in the future, anything that they might change about how they deliver service or what kinds of products, if they decide to get into 529s or 401ks or any kind of financial instrument, their why drives that, and why, and the customers that are out there in the marketplace buy from them. You know, think about that same why. You know, it's crazy that Apple, which is a computer manufacturer, sells phones and sells iPods and iPads. I mean, Dell tried to sell the equivalent of an MP3 player. That didn't work out, and they're a computer manufacturer. Gateway tried to sell flat-screen TVs. That didn't work out. Why is that? Well, because Apple has pushed out there in the marketplace a why that says we believe that technology should be available, accessible, and elegant for everyone. And they pushed that out as their why. Then their how, talk about elegant design and the way in which they operate. And their what? Well, okay, iPads and iPhones. And, you know, but the interesting thing about it is that no one rushed to buy Gateway flat screens. No one rushed to buy Dell MP3 players. But if Apple came out tomorrow and said, we're now going to be manufacturing and selling cars, there would be a line around the block to buy an Apple car. They would be pre-purchased and ready to go for Apple cars. So my point is that if you're out in that marketplace and you want to create a culture of explosive growth, you can't just make a list of amazing products. You can't just commit to world-class service. You've got to figure out why, and that why is not just for you. You have to have it. I'm going to believe the people that are on this webinar right now have something more than I'd like to make a lot of money. You could have made a lot of money a lot of places. There's lots of things you can do to make a lot of money. Legal, illegal, national, international. There's all sorts of stuff that you can do. So I'm going to believe that you've moved past just simply the desire to control your life and your opportunities and how much money you make, but in fact you're really trying to deliver a product or service to serve something out in the marketplace. And you need to get that clearly articulated in your mind so that you can get that out into the marketplace, because the next most important people that have to get that understanding is your people. The kind of sacrifices, the kind of commitments, the kind of hard work, diligence, legendary stories that create the cultures of explosive growth from your people start and are fueled with a concept of why. Why are we doing it? What are we trying to change? You know, it's funny when Apple ran the 1984 ad and they had the Big Brother screen. I'm probably dating myself. There's probably more than a few people on this particular webinar that don't know what I'm talking about. But Apple wrote an ad, and there was an ad where a runner, Big Brother, was looking down and was basically saying from the IBM voice that you will use technology the way that we say. You will get it. You will get it at the office. It will be hard to use, and you'll pay a lot of money for it. And Apple basically said, we're going to break through all of that, and we're going to change all of that. Well, your people have to have that same passion and commitment. And growth for the sake of growth is not enough if there's not enough why there for it. Obviously, this connects to your market, and it eventually connects to your stakeholders. Creating all of these kinds of things, we're going to create for your organization that sense, that movement, that energy that will drive you forward. Now, I want to interrupt for just a second and remind anybody, if you've got questions, go ahead and send those to me. One person already sent a question in, and it said, will these sheets be available? And I want to let you know that a link will be sent to view this webinar again in its entirety, including the voiceover and any of the responses. So thank you for the question that came on that. And just so you know going forward, that link will be sent out to you. If you registered, obviously the folks that are on this call that registered for this, and people may be joining you alongside, so you'll have to either forward the link or forward onto them, but you'll be able to get all of the webinar slides and the recording of today's session. All right, so now let's talk about, we've kind of grabbed a hold of this whole idea of the why. What is the why that drives it, and what's going to keep our business going, and you know, how are you going to make things happen? So this culture, there's this belief out there, this whole perspective that you have to get everybody in your organization aligned to be able to move forward. I ran a company that went from 1 employee to 6,500 in 4 years, and I'm going to tell you, it's a myth. It's a myth that you've got to get everybody all lined up. It's a myth that everybody has to understand and believe and commit all the way down to their toenails, because people don't believe down to their toenails at that same rate. Now you're saying to me, Tom, you're contradicting yourself. You just said a moment ago, people have to understand your why. And my answer is they do have to understand your why. They do have to understand your mission, your vision, and your values. But when you're going to change, remember when I talked about that set point earlier, you're going to create a new set point. When you're going to move all those behaviors, I talked about losing weight. So I talked about things like water, and I talked about what you ate, and I talked about your activities and what how much sleep you get, and what supplements you take. Those are the things that you had to change to reset your set point, to lose 15 pounds, and then to maintain it. Well, let's talk about that same issue, the culture of change and growth. When you have to change all those activities, those 5 behaviors I just listed right there as I was relating it to weight, you can't get your entire organization to all change at once. It doesn't work like that. And if you're waiting to try and move your organization, every person down to the last one, you will spend a lot of time in tears and frustration. Instead, I'm going to give you a model that's going to allow you to change your culture and to grow explosively without having to get everyone all at once to believe all the same stuff with the same intensity. Instead, what we're going to follow is a tried and true model called the law of diffusion of innovation. Now, the law of diffusion of innovation, or what's also known as the adoption curve, really has been used in the past to explain the purchases of all sorts of like technology and equipment. So, why is it that a person would get up? This iPad 3 came out a couple of Fridays ago, right? And the iPad 3 shows up, and there were lines out front to buy the iPad 3. Lines. It's crazy. You could pre-order the iPad 3. All right, and have it delivered to your house the very same day, and yet there was a whole group of people that wasn't good enough. They had to be first. They had to be the ones in line. That particular group inside of the purchase out there is called the innovators. Those innovators are those people that have to, for the sake of being first, be first. They want to be on the cutting edge. They want to be out front, and because of that, those innovators make certain kinds of behavioral decisions, and it represents typically, along this law of diffusion of innovation, this idea of the first group off to the left. The innovators is about 2.5%. Now, there's the group who's waiting just a day or two. Let's let the audience, and all the people that are crazies that are out there in the marketplace, let's let them get out there first. Get it out of their system, and then we'll come in and we'll come into the store, within a week or 2 weeks. And, after kind of all the mayhem and craziness has gone away, then we'll go pick up ours. And those are called the early adopters. There's about 13.5% of the marketplace. Those are the kinds of people who would have ordered online to be delivered 2 days later out in the marketplace. Then there's the group of people who are called early followers. Those are the people that wait till all the bugs are out of the software, till they're sure that the platform is stable, till there's at least a reasonable size of install base, because their answer is, I'm not going to waste my time being the first ones out there. Then after them come the late followers, and they're both about 34% of the marketplace. And at the very end are the laggards. And the laggards can be identified as those people who stopped buying rotary phones because they stopped selling them. You may, in your own organization right now, think about some people who are either innovators, early adopters, late followers, or laggards. So when you think about this law of diffusion of innovation, how does this apply? How does this apply to your marketplace? So if we think about your company at the very, very beginning, you've got those people in your company who are innovators or early adopters. Those are those kinds of people, and the early followers. We refer to those as wartime generals versus peacetime generals. All right? Wartime generals are those folks who have to be out in front. I want you to think about the movie Patton. If you remember at the end of the movie Patton, right? Patton's sitting there talking to Bradley, and some of the people on this phone may not have seen Patton, but George Patton is talking to Bradley on the phone, and the war is over. The Germans have surrendered. We're talking about peace has been brokered, and etc. And Patton's yelling at Bradley, and he's saying, "Listen, I don't trust the Russians." And he says, "If you'll give me 2 weeks and a little bit of time, I'll be able to go ahead and get us at war with them, and I'll make it look like it was their fault." And Bradley's like, "You're crazy. This is the world of the wartime general. The wartime general is the general who winds up creating this need for advancement, this moving forward. These are the folks that help your business dramatically grow because they're always trying to take new ground and move forward. Any initiative, whether it's operational, financial, sales, or culture, your wartime generals are going to be the group of people that are going to be out in front pushing. Now, your peacetime generals, those are the generals that come in who are actually more of the administrative, make things work, make them stable, make them operate more successfully. That's going to, and those kinds of people, I'm going to tell you, for entrepreneurs, those kinds of people have a tendency to drive us a little crazy. Because as entrepreneurs, we love the wartime generals. The answer is always yes, and of course we can do it, and let's go make it happen. And the peacetime generals are like, well, I'm not sure. We got to wait a little while. I'd like to see that run a little bit longer. Can we do some more testing? Is it possible we can get some more data? Can you give me one more case study? They never have enough. And the wartime generals and the peacetime generals inside of an organization can start to really push at each other around the edges. But I'm going to tell you, in the law of diffusion of innovation, when you start talking about culture adoption inside your organization, you need the wartime generals and you need the peacetime generals. The wartime generals represent, and if we just take that small group of them, we're going to call them change agents. That's that first group, the innovators and the early adopters. Now, make a quick list on your own page that you've got right there. Who are the kind of people? Don't look at their positional titles. Look at your people, your core people. You probably, if you were to make a list of 20 of the people that you think about as regularly making the biggest contributions to your business, you should be able to create some sort of a norm across this curve of who are those change agents. And I put that group up there in the front, being the early adopters and the innovators. But here's the thing you got to remember about this particular group. These guys are cost. Right? And so, which means that they cost your business. They're expensive to the degree that as you are trying to either take new ground, expand into new markets, launch new products, add new sales, get big accounts, those particular people, they're out in front, but they're not really who's going to generate the profits. The profits come from the stabilizers. Those people that once we figured out how to do it right, then the stabilizers help figure out how to do it often, how to do it more efficiently, how to do it more effectively. Right? And then you got the last group. And now, every time I talk about this with the CEOs, their answer is, get rid of the laggards, get rid of the laggards. But I'm going to tell you, those laggards, depending upon who they are, and you've got to be careful, because some laggards are just, the abominable no man, right? Their answer is always no. We can't do anything. And those particular people could be cancers in an organization. But let's just say that you have someone who's very, very standard and institutionalized. Let me give you an example. If it were me, I do not want an innovator or an early adopter running the nuclear reactor. Okay? I want a laggard. I don't want a guy who got up and got in the morning, had a shower, comes in and says, I got this idea. I know how we can make the water hotter. Okay? We'll just go ahead and we'll lift up the rods a little bit, and let's just see what happens. Well, that's what your wartime generals and those frontline change agents are like. My institutionalizer is what allows us to make certain that we get margin during the natural commoditization cycle inside of any business. Laggards help you to go ahead and hold and stabilize past that particular point in the business model so that you can still receive some sort of benefit out of it. So if you think about your organization, you've got those people, when you're looking to make changes in your culture, you're trying to figure out, are we going to go into a new marketplace? Are we going to go buy a new company? Are we going to sell a division? Are we going to change a product line out? Are we going to upgrade a technology? Are we going to move to the cloud? Whatever change that you're going to make, you have to understand that instead of trying to get that entire spectrum of humanity to move all at once in one direction of similar opinion, you need to put your change agents out front. Your stabilizers will be watching your change agents to see if it works or if it doesn't work. And if it works, they'll follow in behind them. And then obviously you'll institutionalize with your group at the very end, those laggards. Every organization needs a balance between wartime generals and peacetime generals. And one of the things that you need to understand about your culture is, do you have the right balance for explosive growth? If you have all wartime generals, you'll take all sorts of opportunities in the marketplace, and then you'll mess them up. And you'll wind up being the company who had a fantastic marketing campaign and a terrible product. Now everybody knows you stink. So you need to make certain that you've got enough peacetime generals that are able to operate and run the business itself and make certain that it works and works regularly. So make certain that that balance is there. Look at your people. Don't look at the org chart specifically. Because I'll tell you, in my own organizations that I've run and the companies that I've advised and the companies I've been associated with, normally change leadership comes from the very senior people in the organization, and then they carve out unique teams that have these qualities that I'm talking about, change agent, stabilizer, and institutionalizer. They take the change agents and they have that group skunk work the opportunity together, move the entire idea forward, get it to a point of stabilization, and then hand it off to the rest of the organization. And that's regardless of where they fit into the traditional org chart. So what should you do about your culture? Well, step number one, identify your people. Identify your teams and the people that you've got out there. Second thing is you need to assign them a particular task. Meaning specifically say to them, look, this is the hill we're going to take, okay, change agents? We're going to go into this marketplace, or we're going to, it's funny, you know, Southwest Airlines is kind of famous for when they are going to move into a marketplace, they've got an entire team that truly gets on the plane today. We're taking the gates, we're going to take these gates or this area over in 2 weeks, a week or whatever. They put those people on the plane today. Those people have an entire set of punch lists and work out and punch down items that they need to get done to make certain that they can take that rapidly. You've got to get that assignment, that opportunity defined for them, and then you need to communicate in your organization, look, we got change agent group. I'm not going to let these guys distract us from our day-to-day, everyday mission, which is what my stabilizers and my institutionalizers are doing. This change agent group, they're going to go make this happen, and they're going to have the responsibility to then hand off to the stabilizers once they get to some identified threshold of performance. You, as the leader in your organization, have to value out loud and in front of everybody, you have to value each of those three groups, right? The change agents and the stabilizers and the institutionalizers. People need to see where they fit in that model of change transformation in your organization. Otherwise, culturally, they don't understand how they'll be valued and how they'll be appreciated. And finally, my last statement is about what do you do about your culture, is this is an ever ongoing process when you are in the process of explosive growth. You have to be in a position to repeat, which means you're constantly looking for your change agents. You're constantly looking for who those institutionalizers and stabilizers are. You're looking for new opportunities to give those change agents to propel you forward with either product, market, upgrade, acquisition, merger, challenge of some sort, new account acquisition, new account expansion, and then move them through this entire process again and again, because your organization, when it does this, it has that remarkable potentiality of that explosive growth, because you're moving your organization at an accelerated rate through that adoption curve that you saw in the prior graphic. So we talked about culture. Now I want to talk a little bit about what is the size of your transformational account, because transformational account is an account that allows you to grow at a more rapid rate by landing it. Inside of my business, inside of the academy, what we talk about is accounts that are 10 to 20 times the size of your average account, or we talk about them as accounts that are 3 to 5% of your annual revenue or more, or we talk about them as channel partners. Some of you don't have direct accounts. Maybe you're retail in nature, or you have much more transactional sales. And yet you may have channel partners that create a marketing relationship or a distributor relationship, a supplier relationship, a manufacturer's rep relationship, that because of all of the opportunities that come through that channel, they add up to being 3 to 5% of your annual revenue or more, or 10 to 20 times the size of your average account. So when you're thinking about what's the size of your transformational account, I want you to think about this graphic here. You know, it's funny. On that left-hand side, I have this graphic that says 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, and 5x. And the X means 1 times your market rate of growth, or 2 times your market rate of growth. If you've ever had an opportunity to read any of the economic pages, the Wall Street Journal, the trade association journals that you have for your own industry, or of course the Beaulieu brothers who speak on a national basis on eco-trends, all of these ideas will tell you what your market rate of growth is for your industry, and every industry has its own market rate of growth. my statement is that 2x market rate of growth, 2 times the market rate of growth that's out there for your market, just shows that you are showing up and doing a good job of selling and marketing. It represents the benefit of transactional sales, which are those small, mid-sized sales you normally get, plus your brand equity, which is your phone ringing and people coming to you, walking through your door, making orders online. That brand equity and transactional sales, 2 times market rate of growth, if you're less than that amount, that's what's occurring. However, to get greater than 2 times market rate of growth, you have to get transformational sales, what we call whales. Those whales are those kinds of accounts that, as I was just talking about before, 10 to 20 times the size of your average account, 3 to 5% of your annual revenue or more, or a channel partner. So what we know is that when you are starting out, at the very beginning, your regular sales, transactional sales, and brand equity, you get lots and lots of sales. As a matter of fact, let's be honest, when you're just starting your business, pretty much any customer looks like a good customer, right? And during economic downturns, the same is true, if not worse. I kind of like to say that when you're in the desert, you'll drink the dirty water. When you're out there in the marketplace and it's hard to get accounts, you'll take about anybody that you can. But the problem is, we know that you can get stuck with toxic clients and black hole prospects. The wrong kinds of clients or prospects that waste your time, take up your energy. So when you look at your growth, and I was talking about that 2 times market rate of growth, I was really talking about these transactional sales and brand equity, and then your ability to add what would be called traditional sales on top of them. Traditional sales are those kinds of accounts that you send salespeople out in the marketplace, and either alone or with themselves and maybe one technical support person, they can go out and land a sizable sale. Now, you wouldn't send them out in the marketplace for a transactional sale because the cost of selling is too high. You'd rather handle that either through inside sales or through online portal or something along those lines. Traditional sales is where we field salespeople into the marketplace to go out and present with either themselves or maybe with one support. However, traditional sales and transactional sales and brand equity over time will give you the opportunity to grow at 2 times the market rate of growth. So if you want to go at more than 2 times the market rate of growth, you have to land those transformational sales. Go back to the graphic that you had looked at and maybe that you'd written out for yourself, and I'd encourage you to look at the very, very beginning of today's presentation. And in that particular graphic, I gave you the idea of how big a sales have you how big has your growth been over, say, since 2006 till now? How much in dollars year over year? What percentage had it grown year over year? Most of the organizations that we talk to, when they had years in which they were growing at 2 times their market's rate of growth, it was because they had at least 1 or more transformational sales. What we know is that transformational sales change the trajectory of your business growth. And so what we've talked about today, when we talked about the 4 pillars of explosive growth, right, and we talked about what was going to take for you to have explosive growth, we first said that it was a choice. You have the right and responsibility to set what you believe is the trajectory for explosive growth. We have companies that we work with who want to double in 18 months, in 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. And for them, depending upon what their aspirations are, how they think that they can manage their risk, the kinds of accounts they want to bring on, they set that doubling cycle. For you inside of your business, it's a great thing for you to establish what is your doubling side that you want to have in the marketplace. So step number 1 is decide what is that trajectory of explosive growth that you want for your business. Are you trying to grow at a rate that will allow you to double in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years? What I'm going to tell you is if your answer is I want to grow at a rate faster than what I have been growing, significantly faster, you're going to have to make some changes. And today we went through the idea that the first one you have to change is your culture. You have to look at your organization and say, are we positioned with a very fierce and clearly understood and shared why we have to grow in the marketplace? I told you what my why is for my business. My why is I want to help small and mid-sized businesses to be aggressively competitive to the point of dominating in the marketplace that I think is unfairly slanted towards large and entrenched and established businesses. And so I can't get my message out to enough people fast enough in that small and mid-sized marketplace. It's funny, every once in a while I get approached by companies that are Fortune 500 companies who want me to represent for them or to teach their people, and my answer is no. And their question is, well, why not? We got big budgets, lots of salespeople, and all the rest of that. And my answer is Because I am teaching your enemies every day to take your market share. So I have no desire to teach you how to go ahead and defend yourself. My people are not your people. And that's fundamentally my why. That's a powerful why. And the folks that work with us get that. Same thing's got to be true for you. So you've got to figure out that why part of your business. Then you have to look at your team and say, culturally, do we have the right mix of change agents, stabilizers, and institutionalizers to make that growth? So you evaluate that capacity for rapid growth. Again, I said one of the most dangerous things that can happen is when the dog catches the car. Now, if you've identified your change leaders, and remember, if you're the owner of the company or if you're the senior executive or in the senior executive team of the company, you are the change leaders. You also have to understand who are the followers and who are the laggards. And then once you've decided what your growth rate is, once you've evaluated your capacity, once you've identified your people, pick your growth initiatives. Most organizations have to pick growth initiatives, and if you've got all the large account sales that are out there in a process to land that, that's great. Now start looking at initiatives around finance and operations. But if you do not have a methodology by which you can dramatically increase your sales, and our experience has been that large accounts have a tendency to transform your company on a basis of performance as well as financial as well as all sorts of other good things, then you need to develop that particular approach, that growth initiative for landing those large accounts and get that team working on that particular issue. And then finally, my issue is that you've got to manage growth closely and you've got to manage that growth personally. Too often organizations think that they can take these transformational moments and delegate them. This is the moment of absolute critical leadership requirement, and you have to be out in front with your folks making that happen. So one of the things that we ask at the very end of this is, do you want to grow your company? You know, we offer a key account readiness assessment. If you're interested in talking to us, just send an email to Kristen at huntbigsales.com or call in at 816-327, that's 317 area code, and we'll take you through a key account readiness assessment. It's a way to understand where is your organization at and what position are you in currently as far as preparedness for explosive growth. You know, the thing about this discussion that we've had today, we've got a couple of questions, I'm going to answer those questions here in just a moment, is that if you've made the choice, it's funny, having done this hundreds of times now, I have found that people kind of think that in some ways it's like Hogwarts or Harry Potter. There's some magic wand. What if I told you that explosive growth is something you manufacture? Which means it follows a process, it's replicable, it's scalable, it's manageable, and that it's understandable. You don't have to be lucky. You don't have to come up with the coolest YouTube video or the most amazing television campaign or whatever, but rather you can grow your business according to baseline management principles that follow a particular pattern and a roadmap to win. So I'm going to tell you, you can do that. You may be ready for that, and if you're ready, then I encourage you, or if you're curious about whether you're ready, I'd encourage you to get in touch with Kristen. And then I want to let you know that I'm grateful for you attending the Secrets to Explosive Growth. You can obviously connect to us through the Hunt Big Sales fan page on the Facebook. And now I want to go ahead and take a couple of questions. Someone asked the question, says, can you give another example? I got to tell you of why. Because, the thing is Apple is a sexy example, right? Because, by the way, I hesitate to use the Apple example because is there anything that you can pick up and read that they're not using Apple as the example of something? So that's why I chose USAA and insurance. I was trying to come to the least sexy and interesting thing I could come to, which I thought was insurance, and talk about the fact that they're why. I think that when we get to that issue of why, the mission, vision, and values are not your why. Your mission says, what are we trying to do and who are we trying to serve in the marketplace? Right? Your vision says, how will the world change? But what is the part that will get people up at 4 o'clock in the morning to stand in line to be a part of your revolution? I will tell you, those hollow words posted up inside of your lobbies, and I know I'm not trying to offend anybody here. Listen, mission, vision, and values, I've had them up in my lobbies for every company I've ever run, all right? But if you really ask for the esprit de corps, what is the fierce belief set? If you asked your organization and say, take some famous celebrity that's out there of any level of leadership. I don't care if it's FDR or John Wayne or Cruella de Vil. I don't care who it is, and ask them who represents the essence of who we are and what they believe that our company would be, delivers in the marketplace. That's going to get a lot closer to the emotional lightning rod of what you want to be able to say in the marketplace about your why than whatever your mission, vision, and value statements are going to give you. So that's the piece I would say there. Next question that came up, it says, Apple is a sexy, smart company that sells great products. How can I, a producer of those concrete car stops you see in parking lots, create a why? What an awesome question. First of all, who says concrete car stops aren't sexy? Okay, all right, everybody else who's still on the phone. But I think the thing about it is the why of the concrete car stops. What is sexy about that? Maybe what's sexy specifically in the why of your organization. Why are you guys in business? Is it to make concrete stops? Or does that have to just be an expression of a product that you make? Are you trying to transform anything out there in the marketplace or change anything out in the marketplace? Are you trying to say that, look, these can be made better. They don't have to break after 2 years or 3 years. You can use these beyond to go ahead and to be wayfinding inside of parking lots and to help people to do make certain that people don't bump into each other, that they don't have any kind of claims inside of whatever that is. And I don't know what that is, and we don't have the time to dig all the way through it. But I will tell you right now, inside of your people, if you want to grow explosively, you've got to kind of connect to that. Let me give you a different example. So there was the story goes that there was a guy who is an excavator, right? And he's running a business, and he's lifting out with a backhoe. He's lifting out dirt. And he starts to look at the fact, and this, it's almost as unsexy as concrete stops, right? But here's what his statement was. He looked at it and he says, everybody who's got to build something needs to dig a hole. And everybody who needs to dig a hole would love to be able to dig that hole faster and for less money. And so he said, our job is to help people to dig holes faster and for less money. And what that will allow them to do is to use their capital to dig more holes, which means that employs more people, that gets more houses built, more buildings built, more jobs created, more economic stimulus. And so he said to his people, look, whatever we're doing, every single day, we need to figure out how to dig holes faster and cheaper. So as people come back to him, they say, well, we figured out that almost everybody else who's out in the marketplace can only dig 10 scoops in an hour. And if we make an adjustment here and a refinement there, we can dig 11 scoops in an hour, which means that everybody who's got to dig a hole can dig that hole for 10% less. Or maybe we dig it for 5% less and we keep the 5% so we can keep investing in equipment and people and training so we can continue to grow the business. So a very unsexy idea, excavating, but with a very strong why. Our job is to create a way for people to employ more people, build more homes, make more dreams happen because we can dig those holes for 10% less. I hope that's helpful. I got another question in here. It says, a great presentation. I read the book. By the way, somebody read my book's called Whale Hunting, How to Land Big Sales and Transform Your Company. You can get it through my website or through Amazon. Also, my second book is called RFPs Suck, which is how to master the RFP process once and for all to land big sales. And the question here is, as an entrepreneur, what is the next step for an entrepreneur? I think as it goes for an entrepreneur, let's take a look at your organization. Now, your organization may be just you, right? We may be talking to the entire organization. We may have the entire organization on a motorcycle going to a staff meeting. My point would be this. It's bigger than that. Your organization includes everybody who's a stakeholder or supporter of you, your advisors, this particular group of people that you're listening to right now, those customers that are out in the marketplace that believe and buy into your principles and the perspective that you're bringing, your investors, and et cetera. You need to look at them as a part of that same law of diffusion of innovation. Some of them are going to be early adopters who are going to say, I want to help you. I want to jump in this adventure. I want to be a part of it. There's others that say, listen, you go get an account, you go do something, I'll help you work it and make it better. And then there's going to be other people that are going to say, watch your back, watch out what you're doing. They're always looking for your safety. I think that whether you're a one-man band or one-person shop and you still have an ensemble cast behind you that fits into that law of diffusion of innovation, it still is important for you to have a clear understanding of your why to communicate to those buyers out in the marketplace who are going to be interested in purchasing from you, to your ensemble cast, the stakeholders who care and believe in you, to the vendors that you're going to need to encourage to go ahead and do business with you, and the suppliers that are going to support you. All of those people have to get connected to that why. And then you have to say, all right, let's start to build a sales plan that has transactional sales, traditional sales, and transformational sales. Someone asked for another example of why, a mission, vision, value statement. We're right at the end of our time for today. I want to say, again, thank you to Vistage Connect for the opportunity to have today's session. Again, Vistage Connect is an extension of Vistage, which is the largest advisory board group for CEOs and for executives in the world, with over 15,000 members in 14 countries. If you'd like more information or would like a free trial of Vistage Connect, which is their online format to provide that kind of executive coaching and support, just email contact@vistageconnect.com with the subject Explosive Growth Webinar. That's contact@vistageconnect.com with the subject Explosive Growth Webinar. Until we get a chance to communicate again, I wish you the best of luck, best wishes on all of your biggest hunts. Thank you so much.
The organizer has ended the session.